Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we have Mason Bennett. He's a medical student, and he wrote the Kevin MD article, A Medical Student's Unique Education in a Pandemic. Mason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not a very traditional medical student. When I was younger, I served a 2-year church service mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Romania. When I was there, I decided that when I got back, I wanted to work in something where I dealt with people. So I went to Brigham Young University afterwards and got an undergraduate degree in psychology with an emphasis in non-human primates. And I worked at the Utah State Hospital for a while, and that was a really good experience. And it helped me decide that I wanted to go into medicine. So I started medical school, and currently I'm at Trinity School of Medicine. I transferred here. My first school wasn't a great fit for me and my family, and we're here at Trinity, and we really love it. It's a really great place where I feel like they invest in the students, and we've been able to grow and thrive here, and it's been a great experience.
So we're talking in the beginning of October, and right now, how is the pandemic affecting your medical education?
So earlier in the year, we got pulled out of the hospitals, and we had to do online courses, and that kind of slowed things down a little bit. But it's really made it very interesting seeing how the different hospitals react to the pandemic and how they cover these kind of things, and dealing with things like PPE shortage. And in my pediatrics rotation, I was just in the pediatrics ward the other day, and they were telling me about how they keep having to transform it into a COVID ward. They just keep getting overflown, and it's been really interesting. It's been quite the experience.
All right, let's move into the Kevin MD article and talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected your medical training. You wrote A Medical Student's Unique Education in a Pandemic. Now, for those who haven't read your article, can you walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
Yes, sir, I can. So like I said, when I came to Trinity, it was a refreshing environment, one where I felt like I could grow and succeed. I felt like the school was invested in me, and I wanted to invest back. So I've tried to involve myself a lot. I joined the Welcome Committee. I'm on the SGA here at the Georgia campus. I'm the Chief Justice. And when we got pulled out of the hospitals for a while, there was kind of a time when we were trying to figure out what was happening.
Mhm.
The school was setting up online rotations. And there's an opportunity here in Georgia called the MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps. And they reached out to the students again. And I thought, I've got some time right now. I'm doing online rotations, and I want to involve myself some more. And so I hopped on board to help with the Medical Reserve Corps. And they had opportunities all over the state to help with decontamination, help at hospitals. And one that was available to us students was at food banks. The food banks had all been closed down. They weren't allowing volunteers. And the governor had mobilized the Georgia State Defense Force, soldiers here in Georgia, to man the food banks. And there was a greater need now more than ever for people to get this food. And so the Medical Reserve Corps stepped up and allowed us opportunities to go be the medical support for these soldiers. So my wife really encouraged me to go. We just had the one car, and she was very pregnant with our second child, but we thought it'd be a great experience and be able to do a lot of help. So I left for a couple of weeks to go to the food bank, and served as the medical support for the soldiers and kind of took care of them there. It was a really, really unique, really great experience to have during this time.
All right, so what was it like for you as a medical student volunteering at a food bank and for the Reserve Corps? So tell me more about that experience. Tell me about the day-to-day life of that.
So most of what I was doing was just what you see when you go into a hospital a lot of times, just temperature checks, catching up on the soldiers' health and making sure things are okay. We had a couple of little incidents. Someone got their foot run over by one of the cars on a distribution day, uh, little things like that. Some days it was a little frightening because I was in this area where I was the medical support for these soldiers if something happened. I remember one day, I mentioned this briefly in the article. I got a knock on my door at 4 a.m. I thought I had slept in, and I pulled open the door, and the sergeant was saying, "One of our officers is sick. We need you right now." And we got all ready, went down to the room, and one of the older soldiers there, he was a diaphoretic. He was pale. He was coughing really bad, having a lot of trouble breathing. And I had everybody put on masks, and I did a quick little exam and got a little bit of history, and we took him to the emergency room right away, and passed him off there and waited in the parking lot for a while as they took care of him, waiting to see what was going on. And I remember thinking really hard what I was supposed to do, because we were supposed to meet with another group of soldiers that day from another location and distribute food.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if we needed to quarantine the soldiers who had been exposed to the one we had treated that morning. And it was a kind of a run and go scary situation. Thankfully, the soldier just had pneumonia. We think from being in a food bank refrigerator the whole day previously with some moldy food. It wasn't COVID, and we were able to let the soldiers go out and help some more. But yeah, it was a interesting experience. It felt like a lot of responsibility, which was fun to do.
Now, before you went into this, did they give you any training?
Typically, the MRC does have training, and so that's something that they do is they'll have these training sessions. Before that time, I hadn't been able to, since I'd been in rotations, to attend any of the trainings or any of that, and the need was so great at that time that we didn't go through much training beforehand. Thankfully, though, medical school does provide you a lot of training to help in these kind of situations um, with basic medical needs. So I did have that.
And if you needed backup, was there a physician available that you could call?
Of course, yeah. There's a whole chain of command, and there was a physician in charge of my group. And in fact, one day we were running out of masks. We couldn't find any, and I was able to give him a call and drive all the way over to his house and pick up a whole bunch of masks that we needed. And so there definitely was a chain of command. During this whole situation with the one officer who got sick, I was in contact with them, and they were giving me advice on whether or not I should stay quarantined, and that kind of thing. So there was definitely some help available there.
So taking a step back from this experience and reflecting on it, what are a few things that you've learned from that experience with the Reserve Corps?
I think sometimes in medical school, it's easy. I mean, there's a lot of stress. You're focusing on passing tests and learning the things you need to be a good physician. It's easy to focus on yourself a lot, getting done the things you need to. I think having a family has helped me with this, because I come home and I deal with my two sons and my wife, and I realize there are other people in my life I need to take care of. But this was also another really great experience for me. Practice service and focusing on others during the pandemic, when I had training and knowledge that could help out. And so that was something that was very helpful to me. I can serve where I'm at. I think oftentimes in medical school, we think about going on medical service missions or that kind of thing, going to other countries, but it showed me that in the places we are, we can lift others where we are, we can lift where we stand, and we can help out in the communities that we're in. And that was a lot of fun for me.
Now, for the medical students who may be listening to this podcast, what are some of the other volunteer opportunities that may be available to them?
There's all sorts of things. You can always get involved with the clubs. They usually have things. You can find volunteer clinics. Georgia's really great in the fact that they do have the Medical Reserve Corps that you can join. A lot of the students who I've heard are in it, and a lot of the physicians I've worked with in it really love it and are really great people. There's a lot of really, really great ways if you just look for it. There's this one person who I follow on Twitter, and she noticed a PPE shortage in her town and had a lot of drives and fundraising events and efforts to gain PPE for hospitals and clinics in our area. So if you look for opportunities, I believe you can find them.
We're talking to Mason Bennett. He's a medical student, and he wrote the Kevin MD article, A Medical Student's Unique Education in a Pandemic. Again, talking to the medical students who may be listening to this podcast, is there anything that you've learned over the pandemic that you could share with them as pieces of advice?
I would, something I've learned would be flexibility. Getting pulled out of training was obviously frustrating. You were wondering what to do, and being put on these online rotations wasn't as involved or immersive as before. But I think just being flexible with what you're dealing with and using this opportunity to take time to learn how to respond in a situation like this, because in our future something like this, hopefully not, but may happen again, and having the training could be beneficial. And so I would say be flexible and use this time to learn.
And my final question, do you have a take-home message that you want to share with the Kevin MD audience?
I don't know, looking back on this pandemic, I think we'll think about a lot of interesting things that happened. I remember it seemed comical at the time, the toilet paper shortage and the early panic with all of that. And there's been a lot of division with people on what to do and how to respond. And I think that it's important in this time to come together and find ways that we can help each other out, and not focus on ways that we are divided and not agreeing with each other, but ways that we can assist each other and help the people around us. I think that will show our true strength through this pandemic and make us come out of it as better people.
Mason, thank you so much for sharing your insight and stories. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.